Yes, the real media.
KJAG Radio and KMA Entertainment, your source for entertainment news and interviews in Central and South Central Kansas. The best of the best are here, and we go above and beyond to bring you the most bang for your buck. Find us on the social sites like Facebook and Twitter. Log on to kjagradio.com and jiggyjaguar.com for more.
Thank you. Good night.
If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wonders the circus won't find the park, I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes, or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. And I came to that choice kind of working backwards, because one of the things that I like about Stafford is that kind of the clarity of the signals that he sends, sort of poem after poem. He's somebody who seems to know his own mind, which I find very intimidating, I suppose, in some ways. But the other thing I like about Stafford's poetry is something demonstrated in a poem entitled One Time. When evening had flowed between houses and paused on the school ground, I met Hilary's blind little sister following the gray, smooth railing still warm from the sun with her hand, and she stood by the edge, holding her face, waiting, while the last light found her cheek and her hair, and then on over the trees. You could hear the great sprinkler arm of water fine and then leave the pavement, and pigeons telling each other their dreams, or the dreams they would have. We were deep in the well of shadow by then, and I held out my hand saying, "Tina, it's me. Hilary says I should tell you it's dark." And oh, Tina, it is. Together now. And I reached, our hands touched, and we found our way home. Stafford had his way, but aware of other ways as well, it always seems to me. And I'll end with this last piece, Reading with Little Sister, a recollection. The stars have died overhead in their great cold. Beneath us the sled whispers along. Back there, our mother is gone. They tell us, if you hold on, the dogs will take you home. And they tell us never to cry. We'll die too, they say, if we are ever afraid. All night we hold on. The stars go down. We are never afraid. If we hold on, the dogs will take us to the end tonight as well. So I'll pass these around if people want to come up and read. I'll turn it over to whoever's next. Jim, you have a book in your hand.
I taught middle school and high school, and didn't come across a lot of Stafford poems until one time I had a book that the kids were reading with me, 14-year-olds, and it had a William Stafford short story in an Osage orange tree, which they liked immensely. The ending was more than they could think about, and we talked about that and had fun. And then we came to this poem by William Stafford, which I like so much, and I was curious to see if they would like it. And then I told them we talked about William Stafford was from this area, and I said this poem is written about Hutchinson, Kansas, and you're going to be the only group really in the whole building that knows this poem's about Hutchinson, Kansas. So they accepted the fact that we were going to study this poem without too many groans, and the name of it is 15. South of the bridge on 17th, I found back of the willows one summer day a motorcycle with engine running as it lay on its side, ticking over slowly in the high grass. I was 15. I admired all that pulsing gleam, the shiny flanks, the demure headlights fringed where it lay. I led it gently to the road and stood with that companion, ready and friendly. I was 15. We could find the end of a road, meet the sky on out 17th. I thought about hills, and patting the handle got back a confident opinion. On the bridge we indulged a forward feeling, a tremble. I was 15. Thinking, back farther in the grass, I found the owner, just coming to where he had flipped over the rail. He had blood on his hand, was pale. I helped him walk to the machine. He ran his hand over it, called me good man, roared away. I stood there, 15. I just think that is so ideal a poem for teenagers. I like the comparison of the motorcycle to a horse is the way I'm thinking, with the flank and the headlights with the grass making it look like eyelashes, and he leads it, picks it up, leads it to the road like a companion. And every one of these verses, you know, ends with, I was 15. And he has such hopes. We can get on it, we can go out on, meet the horizon, all of these wonderful things that any kid, we hope, has a lot of dreams. But he is responsible. He thinks, oh my goodness, where's the owner? And he goes and he finds the owner and helps him stand up and takes him over to his cycle, and the guy sees everything's okay and thanks him, and off he goes. But I stood there, 15. Such a poem of teenage plans, may never occur, but such a good poem for teenagers.
That followed his, called The Rescued Deer, that was the book that followed after he had won the National Book Award for poetry. And both of them, I think, deal with this idea of the poet as not only as listener, but somehow as being able to translate as a conduit in there. The one is about his father. My father could hear a little animal each step, or a moth in the dark against the screen, and every far sound called the listening out into places where the rest of us have never been. More spoke to him from the soft wild night than came to our porch for us on the wind. We would watch him look up, and his face grow keen till the walls of the world flared, widened. My father heard so much that we still stand, inviting the quiet by turning the face, waiting for a time when something in the night will touch us too, from that other place. And then the one that's kind of right next to that, and I think it's kind of a similar sort of thing about not only is what we listen to is something that we perceive, but that we are being perceived by. And I think there is that kind of sense of that dual motion that goes between both the perceiver and the perceived that Stafford seems to capture in so many of his poems, and it's called The Farm on the Great Plains. A telephone line grows cold. Birds tread it wherever it goes. A farm back of a great plain tugs an end of the line. I call that farm every year, ringing it, listening, still. No one is home at the farm, the line gives only a hum. Some year I will ring the line, on a night at last the right one, and with an eye tapered for braille from the phone on the wall, I will see the tenant who waits, the last one left at the place. Through the dark, my braille eye will lovingly touch his face. Hello? Is mother at home? No one is home today. The father, he should be home. No one is here. But you, are you the one? Then the line will be gone because both ends will be home. No space, no birds, no farm. Myself will be the plain, wise as winter is gray, pure as cold posts go, pacing toward what I know.
Well, go ahead and give us a little introduction on yourself, sir, and what brought you out here this evening for this great presentation.
Well, my name's Stephen Hine, retired teacher from the community college here. Write some poetry, that sort of thing. William Stafford is, I always think of him as the dean of Kansas poets.
Yes.
Casts a long shadow. And because his treatment of this place and its people was so authentic and so genuine, I think anybody who yearns to write about the same kinds of subjects has the same shared experience. Recognizes in him not only a kindred spirit, but a master artist, a master poet.
Well,
so you try to learn some things from him.
He tell us a little bit about, you talked earlier a little about his mosaic and some of the different things that he did and some of the poems that he left out and different things. Really enjoyed that. Go ahead and give us a recount of that.
Well, the poem we were talking about is called, I believe it's Things I Learned Last Week.
Yeah.
It's what's called a mosaic poem. I'd been fascinated by those before I even knew they had a name.
Yeah.
I finally discovered there was a name for it. But it looks at first like a mosaic, which is just little chips of a medium in an art, a work of art. It seems random and fragmented, but then when you get a certain perspective, you see that there's a pattern that creates some kind of meaning or sensation, well, experience. So the mosaic poems tries to do that. So he begins with these little things that seem to be fragmentary, and they seem sort of random and inconsequential. Things you learned last week, what did you learn? Well, sometimes you can open a sticky door with your elbow, you know, which seems, duh, you know, it's that kind of thing. And so you're just moseying along. They're easy and accessible. Yeah, I share that experience. I suspect that's true. Ants, when they meet, usually pass on the right. He said about that he tried to watch them, but he couldn't tell, so he just made it up. He just decided they passed, you know. But it gets to more and more heavily weighted incidents until finally you see a pattern here. Well, if you stay alert, you're going to learn all kinds of things every week. They all matter.
Yeah.
But in a sense, if you start trying to winnow out what's important from what is inconsequential, you may miss what's really important.
Yeah.
You may lose your discipline.
You mentioned a right word, wrong word, creative writing exercise that you did in relation to Stafford and everything. Go ahead and give us a little information on that.
Well, I'm not sure this is kosher, and so you broadcast it, but the statute of limitations has run out now. I've been gone too long. But I discovered these, what I thought of as eccentric words. I just gave it that name, how to get kids to tune into a poem in a higher level of sensitivity than they are wanted to. Because you know what happens in high school, we read a poem, and the question is, well, what does it mean?
Yep.
Well, that's the wrong question. The question is the one that John Ciardi made the title of his book back in the 60s. How does the poem mean? How does it work? And one of the things I discovered, if you left out these key verbs usually in a line that kids, could play with, they would see something new to them about the way the poem worked. For instance, the line that begins a Stafford poem, have you heard this one? A woman forged her face. If you leave that verb out, forged, and put a blank there, and ask kids, what would you put in there? Take it home, play around with it. They will come back with all sorts of options, some of them quite interesting. But nobody ever picks the word Stafford picked. So then they suddenly see it as, oh, wow, what could that mean? How does that work? It just gives them a perspective on the language that is new and different. In other words, that famous line from Robert Frost, stopping by a wood on a snowy evening. The woods are blank, dark, and deep. A lot of people know that poem. I'd let them take that home. They would come up with some interesting things they'd fit. Now that's a fixed form poem, so you come back and, well, that's got to be how many syllables? See, that's a scansion. That's got a scan. So that would give them something else. Nobody ever picks the word he picked, because the word he picked is lovely. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. Well, if you have dark and deep, but you don't have lovely, you'd never pick lovely, because that's not consistent. It's not logical.
Yeah.
Then they begin to tune into the tensions in that poem between what feels so easy and comfortable and inviting and what is something else again, that kind of darkness that's often under the surface of a Frost poem.
Now, why is it that William Stafford is one of the America's most important poets? Why has he gotten that over the years?
Well, of course, that's a subjective judgment that people will make. I would say this evening is a certain testimony to it. You can gather a group of people in a room who will have Stafford poems they want to read. One woman says, oh, I heard that poem in junior high, that poem 15 about finding the motorcycle. The person who taps into the common experience and yet does it in such a way that you recognize an authentic kind of drama in it,
Yeah.
I know what that's about. I've felt that kind of thrill of emergence at the beginning of adolescence,
Yeah.
Now, they don't say it that way, but that's what they feel intuitively. That commonality of experience that is rendered in a heightened and more memorable language, which is what the poet has to do. And yet, there's that art, that brings nature and this craft into a unity that seems like it grew on a tree, it seems inevitable. He said that once. I don't want to write great poems. I want to write coercive poems. It's a poetry that coerces you into a perspective, an experience, a point of view, and it teaches you an awful lot about how language works, which is what great poetry always does. It shows you how the language works.
Yeah.